The group chat buzzed on my phone for the 7th time that morning. Photos of flight tickets, excited chatter about beach outfits, and a flurry of emojis and exclamation points from my mom, my brother Daniel, his wife, my cousin Laura, and even Uncle Jeff. Everyone was clearly thrilled about the upcoming family vacation. Everyone except me. I scrolled through the messages silently, pausing on one in particular. "Anna, can you send your flight info so we can organize airport pickups?" But no one had sent me any details about where we'd be staying. No address, no booking confirmation, not even a room assignment. So I messaged Mom directly. "Hey, just checking. Did someone already book a place for me too?" Her reply came 5 minutes later. "Oh, totally slipped my mind. Everything's booked now. Maybe try to find somewhere nearby?" "Sorry, sweetie. No real explanation, no sincere apology. Just an oops. Like this wasn't the same kind of thing that had been happening since I was 14. I stared at the message, heart thudding, a familiar sting spreading in my chest. They'd done it again, forgotten me, or pretended to. You see, in my family, I was always the afterthought. The extra chair pulled up at the last minute, the one missing from group photos, the birthday they remembered only when Facebook sent a notification, the one who didn't quite belong. Daniel was the golden child, business school grad, married with 2 kids, dependable and polished. Laura was the vibrant, outgoing cousin who was always the life of the party, always seen, always embraced. And me? I was Anna, quiet, single, driven in ways they never quite understood. Over the past decade, I'd built a modest yet thriving interior design studio. I had clients across Europe and had just completed a major project for one of Spain's top luxury hotels. But to my family, none of that ever seemed to count. "You should really think about getting a more stable job," Mom had said last Christmas. "Sounds more like a passion project," Laura had chimed in, twirling her Aperol spritz. I smiled politely, nodded like always, but deep down it chipped away at something. But this time, I wasn't going to cry in the bathroom or quietly back out of the trip in shame. This time I had a different idea. Still watching the group chat buzz with excitement about their average beachside rentals, I opened a new browser tab. I typed 3 simple words: Ibiza Luxury Villas. The family holiday was meant to be a budget-friendly 5-day trip to celebrate my mother's birthday. A cozy little getaway, she had said. But now, they had booked every apartment in that small complex and conveniently left me out. There it was, Villa Azul. 7 bedrooms, an infinity pool, ocean views, a private chef, round-the-clock staff. The price tag? 18,000 euros for 5 days. I paused, then smiled. Perfect. Without hesitation, I booked it. Just for a bit of flair, I also arranged for the Rolls-Royce Ghost I'd recently added to my design business portfolio to be available as a rental investment, my latest venture. I forwarded the confirmation to my assistant with a note. "Please make sure the villa is stocked with Mom's favorite wine. Label everything for Miss Anna. I want this to be unforgettable. Because if there's one thing I've learned after being treated like an afterthought all my life, it's that silence isn't always about strength. Sometimes, silence is a strategy." 2 days later, while my family continued planning group activities without me, I quietly finalized every detail. Airport pickups, villa staff uniforms, engraved welcome notes in every room. My assistant texted back, "Everything is arranged. Should I have the villa manager notify the main resort when you arrive?" I replied, "No. Let's keep it a surprise. I want to see their faces." And I meant it, because for 31 years I had waited for someone in that family to truly see me. In 3 days, they finally would. And they wouldn't forget again. The wheels of the Rolls-Royce crunched softly on the gravel driveway of the villa. Morning sunlight sparkled on the Mediterranean waves just beyond the glass fence, while the scent of saltwater and jasmine filled the air. I stepped out of the car quietly, my white linen jumpsuit catching the breeze, sunglasses reflecting the coastline behind me. "Welcome to Villa Azul, Miss Anna," the villa manager said with a slight bow. "Everything is prepared exactly as requested." "Thank you," I replied, my voice steady and controlled. From the villa's elevated terrace, I could see the cluster of small vacation apartments where my family was staying, just down the hill. They looked cheerful, cozy, and average. And I was home. As the staff unloaded my luggage, I glanced down toward the apartment complex. A group was gathering by the pool: Daniel, Laura, Mom, and several others. Loud laughter drifted faintly up the hill. I could tell the moment someone spotted the Rolls Royce. Heads turned. Laura's sunglasses slipped off. Daniel paused mid-conversation. Mom shaded her eyes with one hand. I walked inside without looking back. The villa was breathtaking. White marble floors, floor-to-ceiling glass walls, a gourmet kitchen stocked with fresh fruit and champagne already chilled. On the massive dining table sat a framed photo of Mom from her 50th birthday party, just as I'd requested, surrounded by her favorite flowers. The same Mom who had texted completely forgot, as if I were some distant relative, not her daughter. I stood for a moment, staring at the photo. Then I walked over, picked it up, and moved it aside. It didn't belong in the center anymore. Not today. I gave them an hour to wonder, an hour to sweat, an hour to realize that the girl they thought they'd dismissed, left behind, and forgotten had just arrived, on their terms, in a way they never saw coming. At exactly noon, I made my way down the path toward the pool where they were gathered. The sounds of clinking glasses and light chatter floated up, but everything stopped the moment I rounded the corner. I removed my sunglasses and smiled. "Hey, everyone!" A stunned silence followed. Mom blinked rapidly. Daniel did a double take. Laura's jaw dropped, frozen mid-sip of her mimosa. "Anna?" Mom asked, as if she couldn't quite believe her own eyes. "Of course it's Anna," Daniel muttered, recovering quickly. "She just arrived in a freaking Rolls Royce." "I thought everything was fully booked," Laura said, turning to Mom. Mom stammered, I thought you weren't coming." "I managed to find something nearby," I said smoothly. "Last minute. Lucky, huh?" "Where are you staying?" Daniel asked. I pointed upward. "Villa Azul." Daniel blinked. "That villa? The one with the private chef and the infinity pool?" Laura added. "Yes," I said, brushing an imaginary speck of dust from my wrist. "That one." There was another silence, the kind that stretches uncomfortably, held together by 1,000 unspoken emotions: guilt, confusion, pride. "Well," Mom finally said, forcing a smile, "I'm glad you made it. We thought you'd be upset." "Why would I be upset?" I asked, looking her straight in the eyes. "It's just a family holiday." "You said you forgot." Laura tried to break the tension. "Maybe we can all come see your place later. It sounds amazing." "I'm sure you'll see plenty of it," I replied casually. "I've arranged a birthday dinner there tomorrow night. Everything's catered. Chef Julian was flying in from Barcelona." Mom blinked. "Arranged dinner? At your place?" I smiled wider. "Of course. It's your birthday. I wanted to make it special." Truthfully, it wasn't really about making it special. It was about being seen. I had spent too many years watching Daniel's endless promotions being celebrated, Laura's new condos admired, everyone else's milestones paraded like trophies. Meanwhile, my successes were footnotes, if they were acknowledged at all. "Anna," Mom said, her tone softer now, "you didn't have to do all that." "Maybe I did," I said quietly. "Maybe it's time." Back at the villa, I stood on the terrace with a glass of champagne, watching the sun slowly sink into the ocean. Down below, I could still see my family by the pool. Their laughter had quieted. They looked up at the villa more than once. I didn't wave. I didn't need to. The message had already been sent, and tomorrow, the real dinner would begin, with the wine, with the speeches, and with the truth. The next evening, just before sunset, Villa Azul shimmered in candlelight. Golden lanterns floated above the infinity pool, casting warm reflections on the still water. Tables were set beneath the pergola, draped in white linen and lined with crystal glassware, gold flatware, and personalized name cards, each written in elegant calligraphy. A soft breeze carried the scent of rosemary, grilled sea bass, and Mom's favorite dessert, lemon olive oil cake. The birthday dinner was ready. I stood near the entrance in a tailored silk dress, watching the staff make final adjustments. Behind me, the gentle hum of a string quartet filled the air. The entire setup was elegant, intentional, precise. I wanted it to be unforgettable, because this dinner wasn't just a celebration, it was a statement. The Rolls-Royces arrived in sequence just as I had planned, the same luxury fleet they had watched me step out of 2 days before. Now they were stepping into my world. Mom stepped out first, wearing her favorite navy gown, the one she'd worn to Daniel's company award gala last year. Dad followed, stiff in his linen jacket, glancing around the villa as if still trying to piece it all together. Daniel and his wife held hands, their expressions blank but alert. Laura, as always, looked effortlessly composed until she spotted the cake display. "Is that flown in from Giacomo's in Milan?" she whispered. I smiled. "Chef Julian made it himself." Silence again, surprise, discomfort, and a hint of awe. They were used to being the center of attention. Tonight, they were just guests. As everyone took their seats, the mood gradually shifted. The champagne softened their edges, and the food amazed them. I watched as the tension eased, replaced by genuine curiosity. Mom turned to me, her tone light and intrigued. "This place is beyond anything I imagined." "Really, Anna? I had no idea." "Most people don't," I said, taking a sip of my wine. "You've done well," Dad added, his voice a bit gruff, as if it pained him to admit it. "Very well." "I'm glad you think so," I replied calmly. "It's been a long journey." By the time dessert was served, I stood to speak. Everyone fell silent. I looked around the table at the familiar faces, faces that had smiled at one another for decades, often without noticing the one face lingering just outside the frame. Mine. "I want to thank you all for coming tonight," I began, my voice steady. "I know this trip was supposed to be low-key, casual, but when I heard there wasn't room for me in the apartment bookings..." A ripple of discomfort moved across the table. "I decided to make my own arrangements." "Appropriate, I think." A few nervous half-laughs followed, unsure of how to take the tone. Mom shifted uncomfortably. "Anna, we really didn't mean to exclude you." "It was forgotten," I said, locking eyes with her. "It's okay. It's not the first time." That stung more than I let on, but I didn't let my voice falter. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. "I used to think I had to earn a seat at this table by proving I was like the rest of you," I continued, "by taking a safer path, downplaying my choices, accepting being underestimated." A long silence settled. "But over the years, I built something, quietly. While you were all comparing promotions, bonuses, mortgages, and Teslas, I was building a business that now serves clients in 6 countries. I'm not saying this for applause," I added as Laura's eyes flicked away. "I'm saying it because I spent too long thinking your validation was something I needed." I paused. "But I don't. Not anymore." Mom spoke first, her voice small. "Anna, we never wanted you to..." "I know," I interrupted. "You never wanted me to feel left out. But you forgot me again and again." The honesty hit like a thunderclap. Daniel looked down at his napkin. Laura sipped her water without meeting my gaze. Dad stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. I took a breath and softened my tone. "But I forgive you. I really do. This dinner isn't about revenge. It's about rewriting the story. It's about finally stepping into the space I've always deserved." "Anna," Mom said, her voice trembling, "this is overwhelming." "It's not meant to be overwhelming," I replied gently. "It's meant to be seen." We ended the night with toasts and quiet conversation. Some avoided me, while others offered nervous compliments. But I didn't mind. I wasn't here for applause. I was here for closure. And maybe, for the first time in my life, I had finally found it. Tomorrow, I would show them more. The studio, the clients, the Forbes mentioned they'd never noticed. But for tonight, I let the silence speak, because sometimes silence says, "I don't need your permission anymore." The next morning, the villa was quiet. A soft, golden haze blanketed the ocean as the first rays of sun stretched across the horizon. I stood barefoot on the terrace with a cup of coffee, letting the calm settle into my bones. Last night had been intense and necessary. Today would be different. It was time for them to see, not just hear, what I had built. By mid-morning, the Rolls-Royces arrived again, this time to bring everyone back to the villa for what I had named the Vision Tour. I could tell from their faces they weren't sure what to expect. Mom looked nervous. Dad? Guarded. Daniel whispered something to Laura, who shrugged but looked genuinely curious. I greeted them warmly. I hope you brought comfortable shoes. We'll be walking through 15 years of work today. We started in the great room, where I had arranged a series of tall panels, each showcasing a different project from my firm. There were luxury hotels, boutique apartments, celebrity homes. I included design sketches, final photos, and notes from high-profile clients who had given permission to be named. Their eyes moved slowly across the displays. I saw Daniel pause at the plaque from Nast Traveler, naming my firm one of the top 10 visionary design studios in Europe. Mom lingered in front of a photo of my work featured in Architectural Digest, a space she once called too modern when I showed her an early draft years ago. I had no idea, she whispered. No, I said gently. You didn't ask. From there, we walked through the private studio wing of the villa, my actual workspace. There, I kept physical models, mood boards, client prototypes, and timelines for upcoming projects. This is the expansion phase, I explained as we entered the long gallery room. In the past 3 years, I've opened branches in Paris, Lisbon, and New York. My work is now contracted through developers across 2 continents. Dad let out a low whistle. This is serious scale. It's been that way for a while, I said, walking over to a large screen and turning it on. I've even been developing a software platform for real-time virtual interior staging, AI-enhanced, of course, launching next spring. Daniel leaned forward. Really advanced. Who's funding this? I am, I replied. He looked stunned. I led them to a wall I'd saved for last. It held 4 simple frames. Each contained an email or message from my family. Dismissive, belittling, or simply indifferent. One was a forwarded message from Laura. Let's not ask Anna to decorate the lake house. She does weird stuff. Another was from Dad. Maybe it's time you thought about something practical. Next to each message was a photo of the project that followed. Awards, client testimonials, revenue figures. Silence fell. Mom stepped forward and touched the frame with her own message. We don't want to see you struggle anymore, sweetie. She turned to me, her eyes glistening. I thought I was helping. I know you did, I said gently. But it wasn't help. It was doubt, wrapped in concern. We moved into the media room, where I had prepared a short film, just 5 minutes long, a visual timeline of my journey, clips of me working in that tiny one-room studio in Lisbon, snippets from client interviews, project unveilings, magazine covers, footage from when I was featured on a panel about design tech in Dubai. The final shot was a slow zoom out from my desk, revealing the entire global team I now employed. I looked around as the lights came back on. No one spoke for a moment. Then Daniel let out a long breath. You built a legacy, Anna. Finally, the words I had waited years to hear. Afterward, we walked back into the sunlit courtyard. Mom took my hand. You weren't just making spaces beautiful, she said quietly. You were making space for yourself, for your dreams. I smiled. Exactly. That afternoon, the family returned to their rental apartments in silence, carrying folders I had prepared for them, portfolios, investment briefs, notes from early projects they had ignored or laughed off. I didn't expect apologies. I didn't need them. But I wanted them to walk away, knowing that while they had underestimated me, I had never underestimated myself. Later that evening, I sat alone on the villa terrace as the sun dipped behind the cliffs, bathing the ocean in gold and rose hues. The soft hush of waves filled the silence, and I let the breeze calm my restless mind. The tour had gone exactly as planned, maybe even better. But I knew it wasn't over yet. Because when people are forced to see you differently, they either evolve or retreat into old patterns. My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah, my assistant back in Lisbon. Just a heads up. Mr. Graham, your father, is waiting at the villa entrance. Says he'd like to speak privately. Of course he did. I found him waiting near the edge of the garden, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the horizon as if preparing to deliver a business pitch, not to apologize to his daughter. Beautiful view, he said without turning. It is. He nodded slowly, then faced me. You've built something extraordinary, Anna. I'll admit that freely. I raised an eyebrow. Freely? He smiled faintly. Well, maybe not easily. You caught us off guard. That wasn't the plan, I replied. But the truth tends to do that. He glanced at the villa behind me. The tall glass walls, the clean lines, the lingering scent of lavender from the gardens. You've always been talented. I just never imagined it would scale like this. Because it didn't fit your definition of success, I said, sharper than I intended. He said nothing. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder, a formal document with the Sullivan Holdings logo on the front. This is a proposal, he said. I took the folder, flipping through it quickly. Pages filled with projections, merger options, and cross-promotional branding. You want to bring my design firm under your umbrella? I asked, staring at him. We think it would elevate both brands, he said carefully. You've clearly established market power, but with the backing of our firm and network, you could scale even faster. We'd offer capital, infrastructure, access to corporate real estate clients. I held up a hand. You're pitching me like I'm on Shark Tank, Dad. He paused. I'm trying to make amends, in my way. My jaw clenched. Where was this support when I was designing apartments out of a €300 a month studio in Lisbon? When I showed you my first renders and you called them frivolous doodles? When I asked you to invest €5,000 and you said, that's not a bet I'd take on my own child? His face flushed slightly. That was a long time ago. Not to me. We stood in silence for a long moment as the breeze shifted. Dad, I said finally. Do you even like my work? He looked taken aback. What? My style? My philosophy? Do you believe in it? Or do you just believe in the numbers now that I'm too big to fail? He opened his mouth, then closed it. I'll be honest. I don't always understand it, but clearly others do. I smiled bitterly. There it is. I'm not looking to be absorbed, I said quietly. Not now. Not by the firm that spent years politely dismissing my entire vision. He nodded slowly. So it's a no? It's a not yet, I corrected. Maybe we can work together on a specific project, a collaboration on my terms. He looked surprised, then thoughtful. That might work. And I'll send my lawyer the details of the licensing rights, I added. We do things transparently now. He chuckled, a little bitter, a little proud. You've become formidable. I had to be. He turned to leave, but paused. You've always been smart, Anna. I see that now. I'm sorry it took this long. I didn't respond. I simply watched him walk away, across the stone path, past the lavender beds, back toward the world that once had no room for me. Later that night, I found a message from Daniel on my phone. Do you have a minute tomorrow? Just us? It didn't surprise me. The dynamic was shifting. One by one, they were beginning to realize the person they had underestimated was now at the center of the story, and they were no longer sure where they fit in it. The final morning of the trip arrived with a calm breeze and a sky painted in pale pink and blue. I stood barefoot on the beach in front of the villa, letting the water rush over my toes. The sea had a way of clearing out the noise, grounding everything. In just a few hours, the family would board their flights back, to their apartments, routines, and tightly knit group chats. But things wouldn't be quite the same anymore. Because they had seen me now, not the version they'd created, the quiet, artsy one always figuring things out, but me, the version that never needed their permission. A soft knock came at the terrace door. I turned to see Daniel standing there, hands in his pockets, eyes unreadable. Walk with me? He asked. We strolled along the water's edge in silence for a moment. I owe you an apology, he said at last. I think I always believed I was protecting you when I doubted you. By dismissing me? I asked softly. He nodded. Yeah, that's what it was. I didn't understand your choices, so I minimized them. I thought that made me the responsible one, the mature one. You were the favorite, I said without bitterness. You played the part they wanted. And you didn't, he replied, which took more courage than I ever had. We stopped walking. The waves curled around our ankles. I saw your firm's numbers, he said. I researched everything after last night. What you've done, Anna, it's not just impressive, it's visionary. I met his gaze. Thank you. He hesitated. Would you ever let me invest? Privately? I'm not asking for favors. I believe in what you're building. This time, the surprise didn't sting, it warmed. I'll think about it, I said with a smile. Let's talk soon, in a different context. He nodded. We hugged. For the first time in years, it felt genuine. Back at the villa, the family gathered for one last breakfast. The staff had prepared a spread on the veranda: pastries, fresh fruit, eggs, and local cheeses. There was still some awkwardness in the air, but also softness. Laura avoided eye contact, but I noticed she had changed her tone. No sarcastic quips, no condescension. Instead, she approached me holding 2 mimosas. Truce? She asked, offering one. I took it. Your place is beautiful, she said. I get why you kept it quiet. We ruined it. I gave a half smile. Maybe. She nodded. You were right, you know. I loved playing the successful cousin, picking up the check. It made me feel like I mattered. That's on me. I get it, I said. I've done things for approval too, in different ways. Laura glanced around. So, what happens now? I'm not going anywhere, I said, but I'm also not shrinking to make everyone else feel comfortable anymore. As they packed up to leave, I watched from the upper balcony. The Rolls-Royces lined up again, luggage neatly loaded, conversations more cautious than before. My parents walked toward the car together, slower than usual. Mom turned back one last time, eyes meeting mine. This time, there was no fake smile, just something softer. A quiet nod. I returned it. I didn't need anything else. Back inside, the villa fell silent. The candles were extinguished, the glasses cleared. The space returned to stillness, as if it had been holding its breath all week. I walked through the rooms alone, barefoot, touching the marble countertops, the tall glass windows, the carefully curated art on the walls. All of it mine. All of it earned. I stopped by the last framed piece in my office, a copy of the email I had sent to my father 6 years ago, asking for a small investment. His response was below it. Anna, I just don't see how this scales. Maybe stick to freelancing for now. I smiled and tapped the frame. Thank you, I whispered, because in the end, every doubt became fuel. Every rejection brought clarity. As the sun set, I poured a glass of wine and stepped onto the terrace, barefoot once again. The wind was warm and the air smelled of salt and lavender. I thought about the girl I was 15 years ago, eager, hungry, quietly fierce, desperate for approval from people who could never truly give it. And I thought about who I'd become, not in spite of them, but without them. I raised my glass to the sea, to the silence. To the seat I had built for myself at a table no one else designed. To the ones they forgot, I whispered. To the ones who remember themselves.